All right, here we go. OverDrive off and running. TSN 1050 on the TSN app, your home smart speaker, and up on TSN 4. Bryan Hayes, the O-Dog, Jeff O'Neill, Jamie Noodles McLennan.
Back on.
The old goal song bringing us in here.
I'll tell you what, there's emotion. Is it emotion? There's a group of people that do not want you down there tomorrow night.
I know.
They're signing a petition.
There's a petition going through City Hall at some point.
But you know what I thought? You look great on SportsCenter. You were posting the pics like the kids do. Up next on SC. Why not just hang out in the studio? Why not? Give it a shot.
You know what? I might have an announcement on that tomorrow. I'm not going to answer anything right now. All right. I feel like I'm running from the paparazzi. Like, there's some sort of scandal and people are following me.
Have you got DMs saying don't
I can't go anywhere without people saying, you're not going, right? Are you going to be in the rink? Again,
yeah, but if people
fault.
seriously believe that you would be in the building is the problem, then they're very delusional and demented. That's the way I would say.
Thank you for that.
They're having fun with it.
I know, but you step on a crack, you don't break your mother's back. Like, it's just, these are all like.
That sounds like a Western saying. I'll tell those Western sayings. I've never heard that one before.
You've never heard of that saying ever?
I don't know if I've heard that either. It stops at the Manitoba border, I think. That's a prairies and Western Canadian thing.
I'm excited, though, guys. I'm excited to hear where you guys are at. Like, is it back on, like, belief, or is it
Noodles.
Like, is it?
It's very simple for me, bud.
Okay.
If you work like that and compete like that and just play with some intensity and an all-in attitude, you give yourself a chance to win. You're not going to win every time. You might get beat by Swayman. You might get beat by Pasternak. But, like, just rolling over and not, like, giving yourself a shot, that's just the part that drives me nuts. And that's the part that drives the fans nuts. It's like that game on Saturday night, they walked out and they're like, really? Like, your back's against the wall and that's how you played? Last night, their effort level and commitment and desire, like, towards winning, gave themselves a chance to win. And when you have the talented players like that, if you just do that, you'll always have a chance to win. But if you're out there sleepwalking, you got no shot. But the thing is, it might be too little too late. And that's where it could be, like, it'll be dreadful tomorrow if they stink to join out and lose the series, because it would be like, you played 2 of 5 games, 2 of 6 games. And that's what you're going to get. If you played 5 of 6, maybe you win the series.
Yeah, that's what we discussed yesterday, right? The hypothetical. Yeah. If they're going to lose this series, would you just prefer it ends in Game 5? Because now heartbreak actually can come into the conversation. It is flipped, I think, with that win last night, the way Leaf fans are likely to respond to whichever way this goes, right? It's now a 3-2 series. I was saying last night, psychologically, if it goes to 6, someone has to be down 3-2. It doesn't matter how you got there. Someone has to be down 3-2. It doesn't matter how you played in Game 1, how you played in Game 4. Okay, you're the one behind the 8 ball, but you're going home. If they lost last night, it would have just been scorched earth, people going nuts, people so disappointed, so angry, 100% committed to turnover and how just rattled they are with the whole process. Now, with a win, and you're coming home and you're going to fill the building again, hope will start creeping in for some people. Not all people. It's a massive fan base. You can't sit here and speak for everybody. But there will be fans who are starting to play their own mind tricks, thinking, I think this could break their way. And again, we saw it in 2013. We saw it in 2018. This has literally happened twice before. Different players, different coaches, different management, different ownership, right? All that kind of stuff. But in 13, they were down 3-1. They pushed that to 7. In 18, they were down 3-1. They pushed that to 7. They have literally been in this position before. If you're a long-standing fan, you've been here, you've done this. So you can mentally get to a point where you can see it tomorrow night, which, again, I think drags people's emotion back into it, which can be cruel, right? If they fall flat tomorrow night and lose for a 7th straight time on home ice in the playoffs, that is cruel and unnecessary treatment to your fan base.
They got some aces in the hole, Hayes. If that 34 skates through the tunnel and is in the starting lineup, that place, and it's been talked about this series, should be buzzing. Like that guy should be the last guy out of the tunnel. I don't know what his lineup routine is, but he could get people going. I don't know his status or if he can play. He can be a factor. The battle between the two 88s, Nylander and Pasternak, scoring a goal tomorrow night might be a major factor. Nylander's been okay. He's had flashes. That's all they've been, though. They've just been flashes. He could take control over a game. There's Johnny had a good play in overtime last night. John Tavares, that's a hell of a play.
Yeah,
it's a game-winning play.
Yep.
You got Grzelcyk, who Donnie Sweeney was probably in the press box putting his boot through the drywall because I've seen him yelling at him before up there. But that's a great play by John Tavares. Mitch Marner, he could take over a hockey game. Maybe it's tomorrow night. So they do have some factors. And me and James Duthie did a thing on my segment, the 5 X factors in the playoffs. There was depth players, there was special teams, there was star players, and goaltending. And the power play tomorrow night has leapfrogged to the number one thing. If they can find a way to score on the power play and get that thing cooking, because how long can it go being that abysmal?
Well, that's kind of what's amazing about watching that game last night is it was still the same recipe from games before. They scored 2 goals, 1 in regulation last night. They went 0 for 3 on the power play, and it wasn't really that close. They had a couple of opportunities.
And credit to Swayman.
Yeah, Swayman's a really good goalie. That's not going to change tomorrow night.
I thought both goalies played great.
They were
I thought
great last night.
Joseph Woll, I thought, was outstanding
Unreal.
when he needed to be. Like big saves. Like I can circle 3. Maybe you guys have more, but we talked about it on the show yesterday. You needed something from the kid. He delivered. I don't like how people are like, you should have started him game 1. Well, that wasn't the case. He kind of limped down the stretch. They didn't play him much. 3 in his last 10. He coming off an injury. He got an opportunity. He seized it. Now, can you ride him? Can he get going? Absolutely. But I just, there are certain situations where Samsonov got you a certain distance. Now, if Woll can get you over the line, that's the challenge. I hate in hindsight, well, you should have done this, should have done that. Well, it wasn't the case. What if Woll started and he was the guy that was down 3-1? You can't go back and say that. What you can say is Woll was brilliant last night when he needed to be. He delivered a win, especially that left pad save in overtime. That was fantastic.
Well, yeah, that stop on Coyle was huge. The stop on Frederick at the end of regulation, and then the stop on Coyle in overtime, that saves your season, quite literally saves your season, gives you an opportunity. And those are stops that the Bruins have been getting. But I think the retrospective analysis is likely happening on both sides where, Woll, you're right. He wasn't going in game 1. No one was having that conversation. No one was thinking he should. No one thought he would. It was clearly Samsonov's start. And then Samsonov wasn't great, but he was really good in game 2. I think where you could draw the line and say should have, could have, would have, maybe would have been after game 3, right? The Frederick goal that went in that was weak. But that's going to be happening on the other side now, where Bruins fans are probably like, why did Ullmark start game 2? And conversely, now, I have to believe Swayman plays tomorrow. He has to. But the Bruins might be thinking, did we throw something off here with a lineup change last night and sticking with Swayman instead of going back and forth? Did it change up how we feel about things? Because they are playing mind games in Boston. They're not going to say it publicly. They're still in the driver's seat. They're coming up here to a very comfortable building. They probably feel good about themselves tomorrow night. They should. And even when the Leafs have won 2 games now, they haven't been crushed, right? They lost 2-1 in overtime and 3-2 in game 2. When the Leafs have gotten through with a win, it's by the slimmest of margins. It's been the Bruins that have been able to breathe easier when they've won games.
Right.
But they came into this season thinking, we have to avoid what happened a year ago. If we get up 3-1, let's stick with a plan. That means we're going to change the lineup if we have to. We're going to do different things with goalies if we have to. And now the Leafs have survived. Right? It's only 1 bullet, but they survived 1 last night. And now Montgomery's flying up. He's taking a lot of heat in Boston for putting Grzelcyk back in. Grzelcyk was out, and he put him back in, and he got burned.
That's
right?
overthinking it, man. These
it's
guys
overthinking
everything. And so as far as Samsonov, there's no sense of looking back because Joseph Woll's going to play till their season ends basically now. But James asked me after the first game, would you put Samsonov back in the net? And I said no. I would give the kid a shot because I don't want to take the chance of the Samsonov-Frederick goal to cost them a hockey game. And sure as you know what, it did. And I'm not saying Woll would have been brilliant, but I just didn't want to take the chance of the mediocrity that Samsonov's bringing to the table. He plays great in spurts, and then he just has a part of the game where it's costly and it's deadly in the playoffs. But that's over with. It's Woll's net now, and we'll see if he can outplay this guy in another game tomorrow night.
Got to do it 2 more times.
And you know what? As far as the adjustments, like I don't think it was like Tavares beat Grzelcyk. He bounced it off the net, like from a bad angle. Like it wasn't like he
put his shoulder down and leaned on him like that.
My point being is that if you think he's going to do the same thing to Shattenkirk?
Possibly.
Absolutely.
But I hear what you're saying, Noodles. But Grzelcyk was the guy. He came out because he was getting buried, and he's the guy on record in overtime. Like, look at this. Tavares just leans on him. Like he got pushed into the net there.
There's no questioning. That's a piss poor effort from Grzelcyk.
Yes, it is.
I don't care. He's not a big guy, but that is just a terrible effort in overtime. You got to have some desperation. Like that's just. And you know what? He kept him to the outside, and it's not like Tavares.
Like that's what I was saying. Like he banks it like it's a one-hander that throws it to the front of the net. It's not like he banked it off
Jamie,
the net.
It just looked like the one negative thing I will say it. This is my kind of final assessment of that. He was just a little casual, where it was like you got to try to run that guy through the board, and that's all it was.
And I'll give
but
credit
it cost
to
him a hockey game.
too.
Tavares deserves credit on the play because he dug in. And he's not the fastest guy, but he willed his way and got it to the front of the net. He deserves credit. And I think the other thing, too, when you put Grzelcyk in, you can control the matchups at home. He had Shattenkirk that had a couple. If you look at Shattenkirk was on the ice for a few goals against on the road. So he's like, okay, I trust Shattenkirk maybe a little bit more on the road than you would Grzelcyk at home, where you can control that situation. So I don't know. I think the adjustments were fine on both sides. It's just the execution. John Tavares deserves a ton of credit for that play.
And he deserves all the credit. But what I'm saying is, I think he also looked at him and said, "I'm not stopping up short here because I can lean on this guy. He's not pushing me out." And listen, it bounced the way it bounced. Credit to Knies for going to the net.
Yeah.
The Bruins benefited from a similar bounce with their first goal. It goes off a skate right onto Frederick's stick, right in a slot, right down Broadway. It's tied.
And you want to talk about learning lessons. They should have learned last night. It's like we only got 2, and we got them a certain way. There wasn't 2-on-1s in the neutral zone. It was taking it to the net. It was shots from the point with traffic. That's the only way you're going to get opportunities against the Boston Bruins.
Yeah.
And the other one is the power play. So if they can come up with some kind of mixture of that, that's when you can put a team away. You chip in a couple of those types of goals, and then your power play can chip in later, you might have a recipe. But if the power play keeps floundering like that, and you can't do it 5-on-5 because you just want to play on the perimeter, you get squat, and you get an L too.
Well, and it has to be. We can see now what the formula is. Like, there's not going to be a ton of power plays. Like, what was it last night? 3-1 or something?
3-1,
like, I don't know. 3-1. Like, it's not going to be a ton of power plays. So you got to make them count. And even if you don't score, they better help with your momentum. Like, they can't kill your momentum where it's like, hey, you're going out there, you got 0 shots and it got cleared down. Like, to me, your power play has to be a difference maker. And you're right, there's some bullets in the chamber on both sides that haven't been fired, but let's see what they've got tomorrow night. They bought themselves an opportunity to play again, and that's all you. That's all you were asking for to get on the bird down to Boston, and be interesting to see how you feed off the energy. I didn't like Sheldon Keefe's comments. I'm just reading them like. You're going to feed off the crowd. No, we're going to do what we've been doing. I was like, okay, like just say it. Yes, we should feed off the crowd. Like I was like, oh my God, like
that's basically saying we don't like the way the crowd acts. Anyway,
it doesn't matter. I mean, listen, they're just trying to win a game, and I get you don't have to put a show on home ice, but just say, yeah, we're excited to play in our building. That's all you got to say.
Well, they should be excited to redeem themselves in front of their fans. Like if there's any contempt for whatever reason, that to me is outlandish, considering people show up for them every single game. And again, if they just got a split, they held home ice. They're up 3-2 in the series right now, right? And instead, they lose game 3, they lose game 4. And now they're coming home, and it's been home ice disadvantage for them, unlike any other team in the league. And
what's the streak at? 7, Hayes?
6 in a row. They've lost 6 straight playoff games at home. Like this is a massive opportunity for them to finally take advantage of something at home. Like there's a couple of things that from a probability standpoint you have to believe will break their way. The power play and winning at home. Like, and you're coming home. I don't know if Matthews will play. If he does, I think we all can concede this guy's going to be at like 70% at best, right? Like if he missed Game 5, something's really going on, or he's not in a good place.
Right.
So if he does return, that will be a big boost for the lineup. But he's not likely to be chugging out there and looking like he did in Game 2. But there's something to star players, core players on this team being out of the lineup and them winning more games, because they have a winning record. Like they're batting like 750 when Matthews is out of the lineup, something like that. And it's even more egregious with Riley out of the lineup. Like that's your number one defenseman. When he doesn't play, they're the 85 Oilers. Like they win every single night.
Right.
And I don't know if that speaks to the philosophy of the organization, that it's core four. And when you take one of them out, it allows everyone else to feel better about themselves or feel like they've got more weight to pull. Because
right.
I really liked Domi's game last night. I thought Marner played great. We should point that out. I thought he looked like Mitch Marner last night. Very comfortable, making really calm, smart, savvy, high IQ plays, slowing the game down. And he needed that, and he's going to need it tomorrow night. But they got contributions, basically up and down the lineup. And, again, from a Bruins perspective, Boston was awful in the first period. The Leafs were great. Bruins looked tight, and
they look scared to lose.
They look scared to lose. And if that continues tomorrow night, that's when it can feel different. Leafs leave the ice after the first tomorrow night up 2-0, and the place is rocking. That's when the Bruins might start thinking, what are we doing here? Like, we got to find a way to close. But at this point, the pressure's still on the Leafs, and the pressure will be there tomorrow night, right? They
I'm fascinated. I'm just fascinated because can you follow that up? Like, just in the past, it's just a non-follow-up. It's where it's just a letdown, and the record at home is so outrageous. It's hard to kind of wrap your head around.
Yeah,
it really is hard to wrap your head around.
Shocking.
It is. So can they actually just kind of snap out of it? But it's almost like there's that cloud out there in the distance where it's like, you got me believing again. I said to some guys on the golf course today, I'm like, you know what? I'd like them back in that building for Game 7 if they get it back there. I'd like them. I'd like them in a Game 7, but that's just the thinking where it's like, that's just the positive momentum of one victory.
Right.
When they play like that, you're like, they can do anything. But then you got the other performance on Saturday where you're like, you guys don't even.
That's what makes everyone stop
Yeah.
short. Is the idea that they would play the way they played in Game 4 is still stunning, and that was 5 days ago.
It really is.
Like, it's still. I was in the building, and I could not believe how flat they were, and how they just never gave themselves a chance. Like, Boston just came out and said, if you're going to give it to us, we will happily take it, and they did. And on top of it, Matthews leaving the game and how deflating that was. And Woll goes in the third, and that felt kind of desperate. And the general disposition of Keefe after the game and the players, like, it was just very down and out.
Yeah.
And yet, the beauty of pro sports is if you live to see another day, you get another chance. And you get a win, you maybe get some mojo. Mark Masters will join us. He was in the building last night, in the room post-game. Vibes from the team. What's he hearing on Matthews? What can we expect tomorrow night? We'll catch up with him. Kevin Weeks coming up. Weeks, he's been calling a bunch of games for ESPN. Role play level of concern coming up. Our boy Rod Black will join us too.
Yes.
The hot rod was in Milwaukee last night.
Awesome moment, man.
Unbelievable.
Yeah,
Tyler Black with 2 hits to start his career last night.
Amazing.
And Rod was in attendance, and he was on the mic. He sounded great, looked great. He's the best.
Yeah.
So Rod Black will join us later this afternoon on seeing his kid make it to the majors. And not only that, contribute immediately. So that more still to come. OverDrive continues. TSN 1050 and on TSN 4. All right, role play level of concern in about an hour. OverDrive continues, brought to you by FanDuel, bringing you everything from the opening line to the final score.
Is Jimmy Montgomery going to make an appearance on level of concern?
I think there's a possibility he will. Yeah, I think there's a possibility. He'll be back up in Toronto. I don't know what he's going to do with his time up here. But luckily for him, it's only one day, right? They play tomorrow, then they're back at it Saturday. And I think the game's been scheduled now for 8 p.m. because it's the only game tomorrow night, right? It was supposed to be Jets-Avs Game 6.
Oh,
and
boy.
We know what happened last night.
Yeah. Well, here comes the lazy narrative. It's all Hellebuyck's fault. You see
Pretty
the goals
awful,
against?
though, Noodles. Pretty, like, you gotta call it what it is.
Did you watch the goals against, or did you just look at the box
for
score?
the whole series? For the whole series.
I'm just saying, like, there's two that go in off your defender last night, but it's all Hellebuyck's
There's no
fault.
denying. I know he's the best goalie in the
get
league,
it,
or
man,
one of
but
them. He
that's-
just
It's
wasn't
just a
good
lazy
enough.
narrative. It's lazy. That's all.
It's not
It's lazy
lazy.
narrative.
You're allowed to
That's the
say
goal.
the
not
guy
lazy.
stunk the joint out.
He didn't
Like,
play very well, but the
That's
team
all we're
stunk in
saying,
front of
Noodles.
him.
That's all we're
20
saying.
more
Lazy
goals
narrative.
in 5 games.
Yeah, but
20
it's
Noodles,
all
it's not a lazy narrative.
It's
You-
a
you
very
gotta-
lazy narrative. As
To say
hockey
the guy
analysts, it's a
stunk
very-
the joint out?
But nobody else was. Everyone else was awesome in front of him.
I
Okay,
totally
if
agree
you
with
want to
you.
go
Totally
through
agree.
every player, we can. But as far as
Yeah.
Hellebuyck's standards go, he stunk the
Yeah.
joint out. It's
Yeah.
plain and simple.
Just a lazy narrative.
Okay,
That's
then
all right.
explain.
I don't
how,
know what the hell you're talking about, man.
Explain how it's. Let me just break down the numbers here.
Yeah,
He
no,
gave up-
I understand the
I'm just-
numbers. 5 goals against per game. That's not good enough. But to
Okay.
say it's all on Hellebuyck is
Noodles,
just a
we're
I
not
don't
lazy
think
saying
it's
it's
all
all
on
on him. We
I don't
just
think
say
it
he
is.
was awful. He
Yes,
played
he-
terrible. That's all
Yes,
we're saying.
So did Winnipeg, too, the team. But Colorado destroyed them, basically.
I
But
hear you,
the
man.
narrative is just Hellebuyck. He's the cause. He's
He's
the
the
cause of
reason
it
they
all.
were going to win, though.
Yeah,
like
you're
it's
right.
it's the nature of the position. It's the truth. The guy's
I
going to win the best
understand
of this
that,
year.
but
The
it's
reason they had home ice was because of him. The reason they probably made the playoffs was because of him. You
Well,
put an average goalie in there, I'm not sure they make the playoffs.
Well,
like
I
that's how
wouldn't say
important he
that.
is. That's how good he is.
They're a good team. They stunk the joint out.
They
He
were
wasn't
they
very
were not good. They were
but-
not good, and Colorado was
That's
great.
all we're saying.
But
It's
his
not the
numbers-
narrative.
No. You weren't just saying that. You're going
I'll
Hellebuyck's
happily
the-
admit.
It's just
label me
Hellebuyck's fault
lazy.
and nobody
I don't care.
else's. Nobody else's.
The one
fault.
point
That's all.
Hayes just
Best goal in
made.
the world. He was awful. Fact.
The one point Hayes just made. If they 2-1'd him to death, we'd be saying, "Man, Hellebuyck stole that series." So when
Right.
it goes the other way, you at least have to acknowledge it. That's all I'm saying personally.
I
I'm
acknowledge
not going to
it.
say it's the whole narrative, but when you got a guy that's a slam dunk Vezina winner and there's 5 going in the net every night, you have to say that went wrong for Hellebuyck. It went wrong for the
did.
whole team, but when you
Yeah.
got him back there, you just expect more.
Yeah, you do. You're right. I'm not going to argue that. It's just ridiculous to go, well, it's the goalie and nobody else. You've watched these goals that go in. Like Winnipeg wasn't even in the series. The guys didn't even put their gear on. Some of them. It was ridiculous.
That's valid. Now,
Like, that's-
they're lucky they won a game because
Yeah.
Hellebuyck did everything he could in game 1 to make sure they didn't.
Just
Right? He gave up
backdoor
6.
plays. Like, I get it. I get it. Like I just think it's a cop out for people in Winnipeg and people around the hockey world to go, it's all Hellebuyck's fault, nobody else's fault. Where you're like, okay, where was Toffoli? Where was Monahan? Where was Scheifele? Where was Morrissey? Where were all these guys that had great seasons and nobody did it? Look at Lowry
bad
goes
checking.
by him.
Bad check. Now, this
checking.
one
1-on-4.
can't
yeah,
go
you
in,
got to
though.
make this save. Yeah, I agree.
Awful
But
goal to give up.
Well,
But
it's
they
not
all
awful.
played
It was
horrible.
91-mile-an-hour shot. You know that, right?
Well.
That was 91 miles an hour. He snapped it, which is crazy. I don't know who can snap a shot.
Noodles,
91 miles an
that
hour.
goalie makes that save 9 times out of 10.
Yeah,
like
I agree.
10 times out of 10.
I agree.
No
I'm just
matter
saying,
how hard.
I'm defending him a little bit because I
I hear you.
I just think that to say it's all on him is just ridiculous.
No,
That's
I
all.
don't-
It's not far away from Rick Bowness. Rick Bowness could have went back to his speech last year where they said he just got totally outclassed. Every single one of the best players on the other team outperformed ours. He could have
Yeah.
used the speech again, but he just had a better locker room, so he didn't.
Well,
Because that was an ass
They got
kicking, man.
crushed. They
But
got
crushed.
I think Colorado deserves some credit too.
Absolutely.
They're a hell of a team. Like they might be the best team out west, and that's saying a lot given that Dallas and Vegas are there and Edmonton's playing well and Vancouver, still there at 3-2. But I think Colorado is a killer team right now.
I
Like,
don't
scary.
dispute that.
Dangerous.
I don't dispute that. I think it's a compliment, really. I mean, when you talk about Mitch Marner, when you talk about Pettersson, you talk about Hellebuyck. The reason they get the attention they do is because they're great players.
They're great.
And no one's talking about a guy on the fourth line or a third D pairing guy. Like those guys don't get attention because people aren't thinking about them and they don't have high expectations.
Right.
Hellebuyck
High
set the bar
expectations. He's
so
a
high
Vezina
this
winner.
year.
He's a Vezina winner. I agree.
Yeah, unanimously. I mean,
Yeah.
he's a borderline Hart finalist. Like, that's how good he was. And part of that, again, that's also a team stat because they defended really well in front of him all year.
Right.
And that stopped. That came to an end. There were breakdowns and flybys, and
it was a mess.
It
like
was a
watching that
mess.
game, it was an absolute mess. I felt
Yeah.
bad for them. It was a mess.
But
It was
he's
terrible.
their man. He's the guy.
Yeah.
He's the best player. And
Yeah.
anyway, let's see what kind of narrative's coming out of the Leaf locker room today.
Exactly. What's
Here's
the narrative going?
Mark Masters, our Maple Leaf reporter. What kind of vibes were you picking up on in the room last night, Mark?
Yeah, a lot better than before the game for sure. Yeah, they're alive. They're alive and kicking. I can say that.
Yeah, you mentioned the juxtaposition of before the game, after the game, even just reading body language. We were standing beside each other after Game 4, listening to Sheldon Keefe on the podium. He just sounded defeated, looked defeated. Was it as simple as Joseph Woll went in, made the stops, exudes confidence, and that allowed them to stay alive, or was it more than that in your opinion?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's a huge part of it, of course, right? Joseph Woll changes the dynamic in the goaltending battle that had been going very heavily against them. And just in general, I find it's interesting. Auston Matthews, he only missed the one game in the regular season, and they won it 7-0. And for whatever reason, when they've had to play without some stars, they seem to have simplified things, bared down, and just kind of gone to work. And it felt like that's what they did to start the game. There's two teams on the ice in every game. It felt to me, being in the building, like the Bruins were tight, feeling the pressure of being able, having the chance to close a series out at home, knowing what had happened to them last year when they were in a similar spot. And the Leafs were able to kind of jump on that, and good on them, because Sheldon Keefe mentioned after the game is that Boston was probably wondering what sort of performance the Leafs were going to bring, whether they were going to push back, right, without Matthews, and as the way Game 4 went. And the Leafs made it very clear they weren't going to go quietly, and they've really kind of changed the dynamic a bit in this series.
Mark, any update on Matthews? I saw that Sheldon said he skated today, and no other updates. But you sniffing around? Any other insight that maybe you could share with us?
I can tell you he skated more today than he did yesterday. He exerted himself more today than he did yesterday. So it's nice that he's doing, more drills, just going a little harder today. So we'll get a better sense if they have a full skate tomorrow. We'll get a better tell at that time. But we're not getting much, I can tell you that much, around the Leafs when it comes to these injury situations this year.
Masters Nation, can you put your finger on what goes on home ice?
I can't. I mean,
what it's 6 in a row, and it's just do you find like it's nerves, or like I don't know? Is there anything being in the building and around the guys where something's different? It's a really weird thing in the big leagues for that to happen.
Well, it was a big talking point today, of course. In fact, I thought the most telling part of the media availability with Sheldon Keefe today was when a local news reporter kind of floated a bit of a softball there, just said, what does it mean to be back home and playing in front of your loyal fans tomorrow? And he said, quite honestly, nothing. We have to have the exact same approach that we've had on the road. It's great that we get to play in front of them again, but we can't be looking to impress anyone. So that maybe gives you a window into what he's feeling like. Remember last year, they had the players staying in a hotel before Game 5 against Florida. And they've been trying to solve this issue. They've been eliminated 7 times in this era. 5 times it's been in Scotiabank Arena. The other 2 times was in Boston. So I guess neither of those are a great thing in this series, the way it's been playing out. But they got to find a way to play the way that they're really happy. Sheldon keeps saying, we like how we played even in Game 1 on the road, even though it got away from us. They liked a lot of the process, and they feel like the process has been a lot better. That's what's required, and they've gotten away from it. And for whatever reason, I just kind of noticed that on the road, it's just simpler, right? Like dump the puck in, go win it back, create chances that way, create zone time. And maybe at home they are trying to find the cuter play, the nicer play. For whatever reason, the mindset has been different, and it was all throughout the regular season, to be completely honest, that was a trend. So it carried over from the playoffs last year into the regular season. They really, the season's on the line. They gotta find a way to change that. They're certainly due for a win at home.
With Mark Masters, I want to expand on what you just said there about the process and how they felt, because Leaf fans naturally not happy with Game 1, certainly not happy with Game 4. I can't imagine the Leafs were happy with Game 4. They certainly shouldn't have been, but they probably were with Game 3, and that was a game that was tied with 7.5 minutes to go, and we know what happened. But you can recall in other series in the past, I think Florida felt this way. Even though they were down 3-1, they felt like they were still playing well, and it wasn't as if they had been skated out of the building. I'm sure media in Florida weren't thinking the same thing. I remember that happening when the Kings were down 3-0 against the Sharks, and everyone was freaking, obviously, in L.A., but the Kings were like, we like where we're at. We still think we can win this because we've been playing pretty well. Is that what you're picking up on, is that behind the scenes, even though it's so loud and the media and the fan base is freaking out and they don't love the way things have gone, does the team actually feel like they deserve to be in a better position and that they've actually played better than the general public would assess them as playing?
Well, they sure did not feel like they should have been behind 3-1 in the series. They felt like they did probably, that was the sense, that they deserved a better fate in terms of the series. You know, Sheldon Keefe's comments after they went down 3-1 was the series is a lot closer than it may seem. Obviously, it's pretty much a dead heat in 5-on-5 play. They feel like special teams and goaltending has swung the series, as they tend to do in playoff time. If you're getting killed on the penalty kill and your power play is not producing and you have the second best goaltender in the series, then you're probably not going to be winning a lot of games. But they feel like there's a lot of underlying things that if they could figure out those two areas, that they could be in a good shape in this series. Now, they made the change in net, and that seems to have at least changed the dynamic in goal. You know, Joseph Woll, one save better than Jeremy Swayman, even though Swayman was quite good last night again. And then special teams, Sheldon Keefe says last night's penalty kill was the best of the series. The power play still hasn't broken through, but at least they were able to saw that off, and it allowed them to live to fight another day. So if they can finally get a second power play goal in this series tomorrow night, that will go a long way, and they feel like there's a lot of underlying things here that are positive.
In terms of Joseph Woll, what do you see from him behind the scenes that leads you to believe that the moment is not going to be too big for him?
Well, I mean, I think it's that he did it last year, right? Had the long layoff and then got thrust into the playoffs. And even though they lost Game 5 at home in overtime to Florida, I thought he was fine in that game. So he, again, he comes in facing elimination last night, and he's awesome. I mean, one of two goes in the first period. He can't be feeling great, but it didn't seem to rattle him. And he was excellent when they needed him to be in the big moments. I mean, Trent Frederick, that's his childhood pal from St. Louis, and always seems to score on him, gets a goal early, and then he robs him in the third. Excellent to start overtime. Listen, we can't forget what happened at the start. It's a long season, but the season started. He took over the number one job. Max Domi's comparing his composure to that of Carey Price. They really feel they think very highly of this guy. And if he doesn't get that high ankle sprain in Ottawa, he's probably the game one starter. That's how it was trending towards. So that, I can't, he's looked fine in practice. I know Sheldon Keefe played up his practice habits, and yeah, fair enough. From what I've seen, he's been fine in practice, but he just doesn't seem to get rattled. That's what everyone says, is just calm, cool, collected. Those are the most often used words to describe Woll from his teammates, and that's what he's looked in these games in the playoffs so far.
Masters, because they win last night, I would anticipate Sheldon doesn't touch the lineup, but is there any tweaks that maybe, you throw in a forward and pull somebody out, something like that? I don't think you touch the D. Obviously, you're not going to touch the goaltender, and a lot of it will stem on if 34 skates through the tunnel or not. But if he doesn't...
No, is it going to be the same tomorrow, though, with him? Because it was so highly publicized. Like, there's so much media. He goes out for the little twirl. He leaves after 3 minutes. And Twitter was like, he's gone. And then everyone's like, oh, he's not playing. I would take him somewhere else, practice rink, whatever. What are they going to do with him tomorrow, Masters?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's tough, right? You got the whole team in one spot. You want to keep him in the meetings. You want to keep your medical staff around the team so that they can help the guys. I mean, there's only so much you can do this time of year to be secretive and all that. And I don't know if that's necessarily the best use of energy anyways. You just got to hope he's ready to go, and whatever's ailing him at the moment, he can work through and find a way. In terms of lineup changes, I wouldn't have thought Boston would make a change, and they made two changes for Game 5, neither of which worked out. And Jim Montgomery is taking a lot of heat, I can tell you, in Boston right now, as they've now dropped to 0-4 in potential closeout games under his watch. But I don't anticipate the Leafs, unless Matthews is ready to return, making changes. No, I would say that's unlikely right now. Liljegren comes back in. That was, Brody, it didn't work out. I don't foresee any more changes on defense. And then Up front, you've got Noah Gregor kicking around, but there's, I don't know if there's a spot for him in the lineup. So feels like what you got last night, unless Matthews is ready, is what you're going to see again tomorrow.
Well, It'll be a fun one tomorrow night, Mark. And then for Leaf fans, hopefully that continues into Saturday night down in Boston. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah, my pleasure. It wouldn't surprise me if we're going back to Game 7 in Boston. It tends to be what happens. So I'm mentally already preparing for that return trip to Boston. We'll see what we get.
Attaboy. I love it. Good trivia spot down in Boston. That's what we've
good trivia spots in Boston. One of the best trivia cities in the United States. So
what's your go-to there? What's your go-to?
Oh boy, I don't have one. I'm going to be honest. I haven't played a trivia in a while, guys. I'm kind of in quasi-retirement. I'm just kind of one of those swashed guys who's trying to live off the glories of the past, and I didn't even have any glories in the past. So I'm just, puttering around.
All right.
We'll see in the off season. Maybe I have more time to get back into that. I'd like to make a comeback, but
you should.
I should. I still feel like there's a lot for me to give in trivia, but right now I just got to focus on one story at a time and telling this Leaf story the best I can. So that's where I'm at.
Attaboy, Mark. Stay on the case, buddy. We'll do it again soon.
Thanks, guys.
Mark Masters. Imagine him and Jonas hanging around Harvard looking for a trivia match. MIT.
Like Matt Damon wandering the hallways.
Right. Damon and Affleck versus Siegel and Masters.
Yeah, filling out math stuff's on the chalkboard.
Jonas, I beat him in trivia. How about them apples?
I love it. So
they go to Southie and get their ass kicked. That's what they do.
That would be troublesome. Yeah, you don't want to mess around with Southie.
I would never count out Jonas and Mark Masters in Southie Boston. Just getting in a street brawl.
Both of them would get stuffed in a garbage can. You know that.
No
that's
way.
The roughest area.
No way.
You hear about Southie. That is very, very rough.
Noodles, do you not think, though, that deep down there's some ninja tactics in Jonas? I bet you he could kick somebody's... Come on, JP.
I think there's a chance.
Dude, I bet you Jonas could kick somebody's ass.
Sneaky.
I bet you... Yeah, sneaky, jump in the air, spiral karate kicks. I think he's got that.
I agree, and I'm sure he's tough as nails. But they'll hit you over the head with a brick. They don't care. You know what I mean? It's not going to be a fair fight. Hey, let's square off. Somebody will throw him through a window just for fun. Those areas are quite gritty. All you hear about Southie is that guys have to fight their way out of that area. It is quite gritty.
Let's hope they're not hanging around Southie in the future.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't imagine they will be, but they at least got to get back there before we can even contemplate what the boys are going to do in Boston anyway. Game 6 tomorrow night, and we're going to have another keyword for you in the 5 p.m. hour because now we're giving away tickets for the game tomorrow night. So more on that into the 5 p.m. hour. Kevin Weeks coming up. Darren Dreger with a report on Rod Brindamore and the Carolina Hurricanes.
Dude, insane, man.
Tough timing, too, because they just beat the Islanders last night, and now they're up against the Rangers. This is a massive series, two of the best teams in the league. So we'll tell you about that. We'll look ahead to that. We got the Oilers in action tonight. They can close on L.A., so that and more still to come. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on the TSN app. All right, Kevin Weeks coming up. Role play level of concern at 5:30. Our buddy Rod Black, who's in beautiful Milwaukee, Wisconsin, will join us a little bit later this afternoon because his son Tyler made his debut last night. Went 2 for 4, a couple of hits, double.
Dude, what an experience that would be! Watching your kid all the way growing up.
Yeah.
I don't know. Both of our dads got to do it. To see him in the big leagues must be amazing.
Incredible.
That must be incredible.
Just incredible. And Rod used to call Blue Jay games. He's called everything. Rod Black has called everything, and he's a huge sports fan, obviously, and legend in this country. And furthermore, I wish I thought of it earlier. We're going to try to find it. Bob Uecker calls the radio games at home for the Brewers. So
Really?
Harry Doyle was calling Tyler Black's double last night.
Dynamite drop-in money. That broadcast school has really paid off.
How amazing is that Bob Uecker is calling your action?
Dude, how old is he, that guy?
He's 90 now, I believe.
He
90.
was 75 in Major League, and now and that was
He's
a long
that
time
old?
ago.
He's 90 years old. I'm looking
90.
at 90 years old. He's calling games still?
Yeah, I believe only home games. Like, I don't think he goes on the road or calls road games. Like, it's simply home games, probably 81 games. He probably doesn't call it all 81. Probably 60 games, 65 games.
Yeah.
But what a legend Bob Uecker is. You know, like as a player, as a broadcaster, as an actor. I used to go on Johnny Carson all the time and slay. Slay with Johnny Carson.
Oh, what a new term! That's what my kids say. Slay.
Yeah,
I'll be
see?
like,
Oh,
do you guys
yeah?
want to go? You guys want to go shopping? Slay, Dad. Hazy, you're on it. I love it. It's new terminology,
Yeah.
and it's sprinkling into our show.
I like it. I don't think I used it the same way, though. I don't know how you respond to doing something cool as slay.
No.
But anyway, yeah, he used to slay back in the day.
That's
And
awesome.
Bob Uecker, yeah, so he would have been calling that last night. So we're going to try to get that. And again, Rob Black coming up. And a lot of crazy action last night. Like the Knicks, they had that last night. The Sixers storm back late, push it to overtime, win at the Garden. You talk about a depressing crowd. And a crowd, like the Knicks and the Leafs are so similar in terms of what they represent to the sport. You know, the mecca of basketball, mecca of hockey. Haven't had a lot of success for a long, long time. And the Knicks are in the driver's seat, and Philly's going to make them travel again, right?
Yeah.
Like Philly last night was like, all right, we're not going to hand this over. I got full credit to that. So, yeah, we got a lot to get into here today, including, you know, what happened in that Vancouver game last night where we talked about Winnipeg. You know, they're out. Vancouver now going back to Nashville. They're still in the driver's seat. They had the game. I mean, it was a low-event game. It was tied
Very
going
low.
into the third. Zadorov scores. The place is going nuts. And credit to Nashville, right? They survived. We talked about it yesterday. How many teams are going to survive?
Cheryl
Leafs and
called it.
Nashville did.
Cheryl called 2. I said 1. I think, you said 0.
Said
right?
0 and put money
I
on the
bet you
line, too.
700.
Well,
I'll
I
give it
think
to
there
you
was.
tomorrow.
I think there was
Some
a
guys
betting
DM
ball.
me, and he's like, "You gotta pay him. You gotta pay him." I'm like,
I forgot
okay,
about
My
I
burner
will.
account.
Yeah, that was your. But there, like Cheryl called 2 out of 4, and that's really what it was. Because that Islander Carolina game, I swear to God, I'm watching it. It's 3-3. I went to the bathroom and came back. It was 5-3.
Same.
And I was like, "What the hell just happened?"
I did the exact same thing. I was in there watching with Frankie and a bunch of the other guys.
Yeah.
It was 3-3, and I walked outside for 30 seconds, and it was 5-3. And at that point, it was – I mean, Carolina's just so
They're just
much
too good.
better.
Yeah, they're just better.
The Islanders, good for them. They got in. They didn't get swept. And now I'm already seeing complaints coming out of New York, like how unfair it is that the Rangers win the President's Trophy, and then they got Carolina, who I believe finished third in points in the league.
Tough beans, man.
Yeah,
Tough.
exactly.
Like what? I don't
That's the
get it.
nature of it. It
What is the
sucks, but-
complaint, though? Oh, it's just tough. Like
Well, I think, again, if it's a 1 versus 8, then Carolina would have been the 2 seed, right? So the Rangers, now watch what you wish for, because the Rangers may be playing Florida, or Boston, I guess. I guess the Rangers would be waiting for Boston versus Toronto if it was still 1 versus 8, 2 versus 7, et cetera. And clearly that would benefit them. They would feel very good if you're in New York, the idea of playing Toronto or Boston in the second round as opposed to Carolina. But this is what happens every year. Like, they got a layup in the first round. If anything, you should be thanking the fact that you got, like, the Rangers got to play Washington.
you got a gift.
You got a gift layup
4
to the second round.
preseason games.
Exactly.
You got a gift, but here's the other thing. All these teams are really good. Like they're all you're
right, Noodles.
You're facing really good teams. You're in the playoffs, and every team that's still in the playoffs are damn good teams. And fan bases will be pissed once they're out, going, that team had a chance to go deep. That team had a chance to go deep. Yes, Washington, not a great showing. The Islanders, not a great show. Like some teams bowed out a little quicker than, Winnipeg, not as great a showing as they expected. But Winnipeg had home ice. They were second. That 2-3 matchup was a killer.
That's right.
Like, these are good teams that are going home. And that's why I always say, like, breathe a little bit, because you end up, like, somebody's going home between Dallas and Vegas.
Right.
Yeah.
My God, those teams are – both one of those teams could win a Stanley Cup. They're
Chevy
that
went
good.
and got Monahan and Toffoli, thinking that this team, the way they were playing, could maybe push them over the top, and they're going golfing right now.
And they got feathers out of it.
Yeah,
because
they played a week longer than Columbus.
And
that's
and
it.
that's what it is. And unfortunately, but you went all in. and you came up short. And there's managers like Tampa's got to be disappointed with how things unfolded because they were playing good hockey near the end of the season. It just didn't happen. You had Kucherov, who's probably going to win the Hart or maybe be second in it, and he didn't have a great series. Yeah,
he didn't produce.
It's unfortunate. But you're looking at it, so you're right. If the Rangers fans or whatever are making us think about it, be careful what you wish for because, like I say, all of these teams, they're damn good teams, and you got to fight your way through it regardless. That's
Absolutely.
the way I feel about it.
And I think, again, it speaks to the arrogance of you beat Washington so easily that now, like, what, you think the sea is going to part more than that?
I just don't understand the complaint. I really don't. That's the format. What are they looking for?
Well, again, the Rangers were first, and Carolina was third, I guess, in points. And everyone's going to have a complaint.
Oh,
I mean,
that's
just the nature
about everything, man.
Yeah.
By the way, when's the announcement? When are you doing it today? The announcement
for what? About tomorrow night?
Yeah, are you doing that tomorrow?
I guess it's not really some big unraveling of an announcement.
Well, you can't get me horned up like that. And I'm like, when is this announcement? You can't do it tomorrow. It's got to be today.
I'll see. I'm going to make an announcement at some point about my plans for the game tomorrow night. And I don't know. Maybe it's today. Maybe it's tomorrow. You got to tune in to find out.
I want you so bad to be like, I'm going to the game. And I'm not superstitious, and to hell with all of you. Like,
how about at 6:30 we make the announcement?
I want you to say that.
Possible. We got the hot rod coming up, though. Rod Black, possibly.
On the way out
today.
at 6:55, you got to listen to the whole show. At 6:55, this guy's going to announce his plans, and I don't think anyone's more excited than I am.
No guarantees, but we'll see. All right, hour 2 coming up. Kevin Weeks will join us on the Oilers going tonight. Dallas, Vegas going tonight. The Leafs game 6 tomorrow night at home in his hometown. We'll catch up with Weeksy. Role play level of concern at 5:30. Overdrive continues, TSN 1050 and on TSN 4.